Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 14. It's called Whispers. No? I knew Connor would be upset at that, which is why I did it. Welcome everyone.
Upset's put a bit strongly.
I mean,
mildly disappointed in you.
I'll take any negative response I can get out of you. I will gleefully accept.
Doesn't take much. I love being negative.
I know you do. Well, let's see how negative we are about this episode. So, the premise of this one is that O'Brien's just come back from a trip, not negotiating, but like corresponding with some aliens who are going to have these peace treaty talks aboard Deep Space Nine station, talking to them about their security systems, that kind of thing. But something's a little bit off. Everyone's acting weird around him, like they're all whispering behind his back and colluding in some way that doesn't make sense. Like, why is his wife having secret conversations with Cisco? Why is Bashir saying things? And why is he getting jobs that keep him busy doing something else when he should be doing what he thinks he should be doing? And that's the basic gist of it. I think when we read the description last time, it kind of sounded more like he was being, because it said he's ignored by everyone, and we kind of read that as, oh, they're kind of like almost like he's invisible, they're just not paying attention to him. And it's not quite that. It feels a bit more like a body snatcher story where everyone's acting a little off.
That was the exact description I was going to use. It plays like a body snatchers.
Yeah, but instead of it spreading, I mean, don't get me wrong, at one point he does say to someone, oh, they've got to you, but it's not really, like, most people are just kind of already that way, and it kind of progresses throughout, rather than like it's like, you know, spreading from one person to the next kind of thing.
Yeah, we don't see it spreading. We come back and assume the spread has happened while he's been gone.
Yeah,
and there's a point where he contacts like a Starfleet admiral, and they seem to be in on it as well. And that's the point where he's like, "How far is this spread?"
Yeah, and I was enjoying. There's a lot of things I liked about this episode. I think two main things spring to mind. One, I really liked when things got more hectic in the back half, where he's actually kind of on the run from everyone on the station. I kind of love that he's using all of the things he should be good at to like evade them. Like, he's like triggering force fields, he knows where all the ducts are, and like, you know, maintenance tunnels and things like that. He's using all the things that O'Brien should be great at to like beat everyone else at coming after him. And at this point, of course, my mind's like running with like, wait, is this really all these characters? Because I think my theory at this point in the episode is that he's actually in like some big holodeck, and it's the aliens testing him to see if he betrays them. That was my main theory for a while.
Yeah, same. I was like, somehow this isn't real.
Yeah. And that's actually the other thing that I really liked about the episode, because I was like starting to get worried that, oh man, we're like 3-4 minutes from the end, and I feel like we're not closer to an answer, and like, how is this going to feel satisfying and explain how everyone's been acting? And if it is just a big holodeck, like, that makes sense, but I don't know if I'm like thrilled by it. I'd maybe be a little judgmental that O'Brien couldn't like figure that out or see signs that it was fake, but I actually really like the explanation at the end.
It is a body snatcher.
It's just O'Brien was the one who was snatched. Well, duplicated, but still.
Yeah. I love that. Because I was the same, where I was like, it's not real. I like holodeck, something like that. And the further it got into it, and the less time there was to explain any real world stuff afterwards, the more I'm like, if this is just, it was all a dream, it becomes not very satisfying, because they left it so late to do anything with it after.
The genius of it
was this instead. Oh, it was good.
Yeah, the genius of it is that when you find out that it was all real, this was all the real characters that were interacting with them. You know, Keiko's like not being affectionate and acting kind of standoffish, Cisco's kind of keeping him out of the loop. All these things really happened. The explanation at the end, when they open the door and another O'Brien stands up, and you realize that the one we have been following throughout the whole episode is something that the aliens on this planet, not the ones they're with at the end, they're with the rebels, because it's a civil war between, I want to say, they kept calling them, was it the Paradas?
Yeah, that sounds right.
It was something like that, but it was making me think of Prada, like, what do they make, shoes?
Shoes, handbags. Yeah.
Handbags, yeah, Prada. I kept thinking I was hearing that, and I'm like, that can't be right, but it's close to that, whatever it is. But when this is second O'Brien stands up and you realize, oh no, that's the real O'Brien, and these aliens duplicated a sleeper agent who thinks he's the real O'Brien, who's been wandering around the station, you immediately think back to all the way everyone was acting around him, and effectively, they got tipped off that he wasn't the real O'Brien, so the reason why they were keeping him at arm's length, or more importantly, the reason why Keiko wasn't like engaging in kissing and like kind of being cold with them, is because she knows it's not really him, and that's why she's uncomfortable. And all of a sudden, that all made sense. And I'm like, you know what, writers? Yes, that made sense. Very good.
It was a very good payoff in that it does explain everything quite neatly in a way that still makes everyone else feel in character, even though they've spent the whole episode feeling out of character.
Absolutely. And it also kind of explains why when he goes to Odo, who's just arrived from his own trip, and he's like, hey, Odo, I think something's going on. Everyone's acting strange. Odo takes him seriously, and he's like, oh, I'm going to look into this. We'll get to the bottom of it. And part of me was thinking, but O'Brien, why wouldn't you just assume Odo's already in on this? But then when Odo changes his tune, when he has O'Brien come see him afterwards, you realize again in hindsight later, like, oh no, it's because he's went to talk to Cisco and that, and they've told him, oh yeah, by the way, O'Brien's not really O'Brien. He's actually just a sleeper agent. I also really like at the end, they all kind of seem surprised that O'Brien, this fake O'Brien, seemed to like be as good as he was. Like, because they say to the real O'Brien, hey, what was he doing, like coming here? What was he up to? And O'Brien says, well, if he was acting like I would, I'd be probably trying to expose what was going on and like warn everyone that something was happening. And it's like, oh, technically we're told from these rebels he was probably going to be activated at some point to do something bad during the peace talks with the rebels on the station.
That hadn't happened yet.
But that hadn't happened yet. So this fake O'Brien was only doing things that made sense to him because he thought something was wrong, and he was always acting in good. And his final words are, tell Keiko I love her. And the real O'Brien and everyone else sort of looks at each other like, we don't know how to take that. Like, it's almost like they're realizing we should feel kind of bad for him. Like, he's basically just had his whole world shattered and has died. And it's got impact.
It does. I loved like a lot of things about this episode, but just the tone and the vibe, like the way everything felt wrong the whole episode, right? You know, you were fully in board with this O'Brien. You know, you spend the whole episode assuming he's the real O'Brien. Everything else feels wrong. Like every other character feels against him.
Almost
they are, but like we never question that. You know, we're on the wrong side. I think that's really well done.
I think that's what makes it an effective twist, is because we're with him the entire time, so we're on his side. So we feel that everyone else is acting weird, so it works to make us go, oh shit, we were the ones who were along with the wrong character.
And also, it ties into this by the end. He is not doing anything weird. There is nothing that he does out of character that makes us think that this isn't O'Brien.
Yeah. Yeah, and the idea that they were not letting him deal with the security systems, they gave him basically some like grunt work with an excuse saying, hey, this is more important, go do that. It's because they can't have this guy who's a sleeper agent working on the security stuff that's actually going to be protecting these like delegates and stuff that come from this alien planet. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And honestly, the stuff with everything feeling weird, like almost to a detriment at one point, where about maybe like a third or so into the episode, I thought, you know, this is all right, but like, this whole like everything's weird around them almost feels a little generic to a point. I was almost worried. Like, am I going to be satisfied with where this goes? I'm not sure it's quite capturing me. And maybe part of that is because I was excited about the idea of everyone just like not seeing him and him being invisible. I almost liked that premise so much that I was a little disappointed for a while that it wasn't that.
If I'm honest, I'd forgotten that was what we talked about last time, so I didn't have that preconception.
That's fair, but I think the ending retroactively made it, because instead of like all of their weird little things where I thought, okay, like they're laying it on a bit thick here with that glance that Cisco gave, or the way Keiko's acting in this scene, there was moments where I thought, oh, they're maybe doing it a bit thick. But like we said, everything makes sense. Like, it's so efficient how quickly this reveal at the end just completely makes all of it work. Even the idea that Jake's still nice to him and wants him to help with his science project. And we see them bond a little bit. But the second that he's away from him and back with his father, the next thing we find out is, oh, Jake can't make it to that date you had to like work on this.
Cisco's obviously filled him in at this point. And the next time we see Jake, Jake's like, just surrender, it'll be okay.
Yeah. And it makes you paranoid about everyone else, which puts you in the same mind space as this like duplicate O'Brien. So you're with him the entire time. You're rooting for him. It's a genuine surprise at the end that it does such not just explains everything, but enriches everything we just seen. in a way that I actually think this episode will be a really good rewatch if I ever go back and watch the whole show again.
Watching it knowing everyone else is normal.
Yeah.
And seeing that they're just trying to keep him at arm's length and just watch him and make sure he doesn't do anything to jeopardize, the visit that's coming up. Like, there's a lot there that you could play with.
And that's the other thing that works so well about it, is that it'd be one thing to pull this twist and then reveal, oh yeah, we've been watching the villain the whole time. But I think the fact that no, he was actually just trying to do the right thing makes it a bit more poignant than if it was just he's the bad guy.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it work, because he's not activated, to do whatever evil thing it is. We never see that. It never happens. And so he never does anything that makes us doubt that he's not doing what O'Brien would do. Like, he always does. That's kind of the point. Like, he just does what O'Brien would do. He is, for all intents and purposes, O'Brien.
Yeah,
he would have stopped being him at some point in the hypothetical future, but we never gets to that. So he's always just doing his thing. He is the same person we've known for a long time.
Yeah, and I think, we get, obviously he has one-on-ones with most other characters, which I think is also an intentional choice, which does beg the question, was Quark let in on this, or was Quark just talking
Quark's
to the...
Quark.
He's just talking to the regular O'Brien. But he does sound suspicious at one point when he starts asking about this alien race that he's went to visit. He's like, hey, tell me about them. And he says, it's about knowing your customer before they step in. And I love that this led to a rule of acquisition somewhere in the high numbers, about 194.
Yeah, that was good. What I think that is so good about this bit that makes it work is, again, we're assuming everyone's been changed, and they're trying to get information from him about what does he know, like what's he learned. Like that's what he's assuming, that because they keep asking him. Like Cisco asked him, like, so what are they? What about off the books? So what did you not put in your report?
The smell.
And then and then Quark asks here, and it's like, is he in on it? Is he? And again, in hindsight, no, he's absolutely not.
Yeah, why would they tell Quark? Yeah,
and even if they did, like, he doesn't need to know any information about them other than how can he fleece them for more money, which just makes this perfect.
Yeah. Because Quark and Odo are both missing from the episode for a long time until they get their one or two scenes with him. But it's notable that he interacts with everyone. Kira maybe gets the least, but even she has a bit. I suppose Dax is barely there. She's
anything with Dax.
She's in the background in one scene, but it's fine. He goes around a lot of the cast and gets to interact with a bunch of them. So they all have to treat him a little bit differently. And for some, that's a bigger deal than others. Keiko really struggles to act normal around them because there's all these little things, and she's she's lying about going to work early, not wanting to leave her daughter with him,
taking the kid out, the reasons,
yeah. Whereas Bashir wanted to do the medical, the physical, because reality they're checking to see what's different about him, what is this guy, and instead it just plays off like the rivalry always does, and O'Brien's getting mad, and Bashir, if anything's oh, you're acting just like O'Brien, that's interesting, but he in the scene it just plays O'Brien's getting pissed off at Bashir because this is what their relationship's like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really smart in the way it does the twist. And at times when I thought, it maybe feels a little generic in some ways because I thought it was just a holodeck or a body snatcher thing, it completely made that all work by the end by flipping it all on its head in a way that made it all interesting and different.
It's an episode I enjoyed a lot while watching, but there were still things that you could nitpick at, say, maybe there's this, maybe there's that. And then the ending happens and it makes you reevaluate. And I have to go, I have to get rid of those complaints almost, even though they were there in the back of my head while I was watching it. It's almost not its fault because it was by design. And
it's a fine line to walk, but I do genuinely think this is a case where on a rewatch, any little complaints I might have had that are rectified by the ending are genuinely rectified, and I don't think I'll be thinking them on a rewatch because I'll understand why every character's acting the way they are.
And you'll be genuinely looking for something completely different. You'll be watching it in a completely different way next time.
Yeah. Genuinely quite smart. It's the sort of thing where I was enjoying it well enough, like you say, but the ending kind of shot it. I won't say into the stratosphere. I'm not going to say it's I think it's going to be an all-timer episode, but I think, when we're doing our top 5 at the end of the season, this might not be in contention just because there's maybe more great episodes, but this definitely ranked a lot higher in my mind by the end than I thought it was going to as I was
It's one that I think you'll think back fondly on more than, like, you know, in a few months when we get to the end of the season, we'll think of this one stronger than during, like, when you're 2/3 into watching it.
Yes.
Like, you know, and again, I enjoyed it the whole way through. There was never any point where I'm like, I'm not into this. It just got better by the end. So, you know, looking back on it from the future, I imagine that it'll, like, that'll be the feeling that lingers, not the, oh, well, you know, maybe it could have been better as you were watching. It'll be that end bit and that feeling of, oh, that was exciting, and I want to see that again almost.
Yeah, because it's almost like it's good, but maybe a bit generic in a lot of ways. And then the ending's like, no, it's not generic. You thought it was generic. If anything, we lulled you into a false sense of, like, not security, but, like, we lulled you into, like, not expecting a good ending, and then we gave you the best possible ending that we could have done. And that's impressive, and I stand impressed.
That's hard to do.
It is very hard to do, yeah.
To truly, like, pull that out and justify everything you've done over the course of the episode.
Yeah.
All the things that you might have been doubting, like, you go, oh, well, I don't know about this, I don't know about that. All of them absolutely justified.
Yep. You know, O'Brien tries to have sex with his wife and fails, so, you know, Crusher got a lot more action in the last episode of Next Gen that we watched.
But it's fine, because he does write his wife sexy letters.
Yeah, apparently he did, yes. I can't believe we went from that horrible Next Gen episode to this one immediately after. It's just kind of a wild back-to-back experience. You know, Connor just couldn't record for a couple of weeks, which is why there was a little gap between episodes, but I want everyone to think it's just because we were so traumatized by how awful that episode was, we had to take some time off.
That was a little bit.
Also, one thought that was occurred to me when he starts suspecting things up, because one of the big things with Keiko, so he has the morning stuff where she takes the kid and doesn't leave the kid alone with them, which again makes sense in hindsight. When he comes back after his day of work fixing pylons or whatever he was doing, she's making dinner and she's made him something, and he says, "You don't like that stew," and she's like, "Yeah, but I know you like it, so I made you it." And I was like, okay, first of all, we're living in a world where you've got replicators. Why isn't everyone just having what they want on their own? Why is anyone, like, making something that has to be shared? That's number one on my...
Because it's the family experience. You have a shared meal. You don't have your own meal separately.
Sure. Okay. Whatever. Yeah. All right. Were you forced to do that as a kid? Did you have dinner with all your brothers?
Yeah. That's what I did. That's very normal.
I'm an only child, okay?
I know, but, like, the idea of families eating the same food at the same time is, like, this is not something that you just because you're an only child, you can't be familiar with that. Like,
no, I'm familiar with the idea. I'm just saying that, like, part of the reason why you do that, not the only reason, but part of the reason why you do that is because if you're cooking a meal, it's awkward to have to cook multiple different meals for each person's specifications. But if you're just whipping out a replicator, like...
Yeah, I think it's the social element of it, that you share the same meal, and that's the point. That's why I assume you would do it in the future when you could just have your own meals, everyone. Like, it's decided that you have a common thing.
Okay, but in this instance where she specifically points out that she doesn't like this thing that he likes,
and she's definitely not trying to poison him despite his thoughts.
Yeah, we get to that in a second, but, like, that was my first thought. But yes, there's a whole thing where she's, like, watching him and he's realizing that she's not eating the same thing, and he's like, the stew's almost at his mouth, and he's looking at her eyes, and he's like, you know what, I think I'm just going to go have a nap instead. You know, and she looks a bit disappointed because clearly, I mean, we say poison. I assume she was just going to, put him to sleep. Yeah, like keep him out the game for a bit.
He's absolutely assuming poison.
Yeah, he's very concerned. But the thing I was actually wanting to get to from all this is where he starts getting suspicious, and he starts looking through things, whatever he can, looking for any instances on the station that might explain stuff. And he eventually says, "Okay, computer, I want to hear all of the higher up officers' logs from the past, like, you know, several days." And he starts listening to them. And I had the thought to myself, I'm like, that's interesting, because the first one he listens to is a Cisco log. And I thought, okay, it makes sense that the logs are relatively accessible. That's kind of the point of them, right? Especially in hindsight when people are looking back later on. But I was thinking, oh, but, like, should, like, people underneath the captain's rank be able to just access their logs? Clearly, it answers that question a little bit into it when they say, hey, this one needs level 1 clearance. And that makes it clear that, okay, only the upper officers can access his logs, at least, until sometime later, maybe when they're seen as, like, old or declassified or whatever. But I was thinking
he also
about
makes
it.
a point of having mentioned he has his own personal logs as well. So, like, you can't get into the captain's personal logs.
Sure, only the business ones, if you will.
Yeah, so the captain's log, that's like a professional record, which is why that's accessible to other officers. Like, even if the captain's decision is final, it's like, no, there still has to be a public record of what he's doing and why that other people need to be able to judge, just in case something is horrifically wrong with the captain's judgment.
We've definitely had people listen to a log before in the show. I don't know if I can think of a time, though, where we got a montage of someone going through a bunch, because you hear, like, Kira complaining about something at one point, and then it jumps to someone else, and so on. But yeah, basically he's cut off from one that he should have access to, and he's wondering why, so he goes digging for answers and whatnot.
And he puts in his clearance code, and it doesn't work, so I'm guessing they just changed his clearance codes.
Yeah. And that gets them more suspicious, and that leads to going to Odo and everything else, and getting all the paranoid stuff, and that leads to when they try and apprehend him, he goes on the run, and that's what leads them to him going to the shafts and whatnot. We should also mention the episode does have a bit of a bookend style format, where it starts off with him in the runabout on the way to the moon, to the planet at the end. And he's basically recording a log, and that kind of acts as like sort of narration framing device to go back into the story. And it kind of returns to that, I assume maybe around the ad breaks originally, but obviously we're not watching it that way. So
feels about right. Yeah.
And that's kind of an interesting, which actually probably more than anything else makes it feel a little Body Snatchers, because the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers had a bit of a framing device like that of the story being told with narration. So I wonder if that's an intentional.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think the fact that Body Snatchers was the first thing that came to mind for both of us, and obviously it's a pretty drastic twist on it by the end, but I think they're very intentionally leaning into those tropes, and they want you to be very aware of that comparison. Like it's meant to feel like that. I mean, by design, that's a good thing. If
you boil it all down to the core premise, it's a Body Snatchers episode, but the twist is the main character's the only one who's been body snatched at the end. That's the twist, and it's a really good twist, and it works really well.
Yeah, and I think what works well is they assume, I think, at this point, that their audience is familiar with Body Snatchers. Like,
oh, for sure, yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't think it works.
I think both that, but then also because it's a TV show, unlike a Body Snatchers movie, like, because a Body Snatchers movie, you usually have to spend the first act establishing who all the characters are normally, so that you can tell when they've changed.
Over a season and a half.
This is a TV show, so yeah, we've spent so much time with these characters that we notice the things like instantly. They feel off immediately because we know them so well, and it's
how you can fit this into 45 minutes.
That's true. You can do all the good parts of the Body Snatcher story, because all the build up has just happened naturally as existing as a TV show. So it's very good. It's a very good episode.
I really liked it.
It was a good episode. Then the ending made it a great episode, which I think is only going to benefit in memory as time goes on. So very, very good. Very happy with it. We'll be back to Next Generation with the next Star Trek video, of course. But when we come back to Deep Space Nine, we'll be looking at episode 15. It's called Paradise. Here's the description on IMDb. Sisko and Chief O'Brien discover a colony which lives without technology. Okay, very short, sweet. I feel like it's not the first time we've encountered this in a Trek episode. I'm sure Next Gen's had at least 1 or 2 episodes where they've encountered people who use tech.
Pretty sure we did this in original series multiple times.
Original series did it a lot because they didn't have a budget to do a lot of effects. And how do you do that? You have a bunch of people in the forest.
So this is old ground.
Yeah. The funny thing about Deep Space Nine is because it's all set on a station and 90% of all stories take place on the sets they've already got, this feels less like a money-saving thing and maybe more of an old script from Next Gen was lying around that they just sort of retrofitted into a Deep Space Nine episode.
Yeah, by its nature, it's almost more expensive on this show than the budget-saving one.
Yeah, technically it might be, yeah. So I wonder if that's the reason for it. It's just that it was like some old ideas from the writers' room, just kind of, hey, we can turn this into an episode because we're, because obviously they make like map out the season. They've got the big like bullet point episodes. They've got some good ideas from the standalone episodes, and then like, hey, there's 4 more slots to fill. What do we do for those? Oh, here's an old script. We could whip this up.
Yeah, and they know Next Gen's ending at this point, so it's not going to get used on there. So why let it go to waste?
Well, Next Gen did the same thing with the original series. Some of those early episodes were like old scripts that were retrofitted for the new crew. So, hey ho, it's fine. I will say there's a photograph here with a dude with a bow and arrow in the forest, which looks very Robin Hood-esque. So,
so sold.
I'm less sold with that, but we'll
episode of the season.
That rating in IMDb tells me otherwise, but we'll find out.
We'll fight that rating together.
I don't know if you've got an ally in this fight here.
Oh, I will make you an ally by the end of our discussion.
All right, let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Helps out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep all the shows coming. You can also support, of course, via YouTube membership if that's more your thing. But Patreon gets you access to all the movie bonuses as well. Check out Mail Fuzz Movies for all the movie podcasts. But that is the show, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Keep watching Star Trek. And somewhere out there, Odo doesn't need to be duplicated. You just pour half of his bucket into another bucket. There may be little Odos. You may get 2 half-size Odos.
Man, imagine if we had two half-sized Odos running around for an episode.